After a decade at the helm, we're reminded of came early and took your seats. You're going to be glad you did. So first of all, I'm going to have to do this twice today, but let me do it for the first time. I'm going to do the protocol roll of honor, and then we shall begin. So to today's opening ceremony, we want to welcome His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Mrs. Oluremi Tinubu, the President and First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera, President of Malawi, His Excellency Bryce Oligui Nguema, President of Gabon, is going to be with us, the Honorable Philip E. Davis, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, as well as his fellow compatriot, Honorable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada. We have the Most Honorable Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. We also have with us Honorable Dr. Philip Isdor Mpango, the Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania, representing the President. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second here because I think I'm speaking to myself at the moment. I see people, no one's paying attention to us. Only half the room is paying attention, so I'm going to stop for a second. Okay. So a lady at the back there said she could hear me, so I appreciate it. But I think others might... okay, so in a situation like this, what do I do? Okay, I just continue. Okay, God loves a trier. Okay, His Excellency Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, represented by His Excellency Hassan Abdallah, Vice Deputy Prime Minister of Egypt, is with us. His Excellency William Samoei Ruto is represented herein. Professor Benedict Oramah, of course, the chairman of the board of directors and president of Afreximbank, is of course with us. We have the Honorable Olusegun Obasanjo, former president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Also, the former vice president of Nigeria, Namadi Sambo, is going to join us as well. His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, the former president of Ethiopia. His Excellency Macky Sall, former president of Senegal. His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, former president of Ghana. The Most Honorable Percival Noel James Patterson, former the Prime Minister of Jamaica, is with us. Her Excellency Dr. Carla Barnett, Secretary General CARICOM Secretariat. Her Excellency Selma Haddadi is here, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, representing, of course, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, is with us from Ethiopia, all the way from Ethiopia. She's flown. His Excellency Wale Edun, Minister of Finance of the Economy of Nigeria, and all the global ministers here present, too many to mention. You're welcome. The governors of state and provinces in Nigeria and other parts of Africa, global African governors of central banks, including the Governor Cardoso of the Nigerian Central Bank. We have so many captains of industry here. I know Tony Elumelu will be joining us, Strive Masiwa, Aliko Dangote. I could go on. The list is too long for me to continue on that. Diplomatic Corps and the head of international organizations here present, board members and shareholders of Afreximbank, former presidents of Afreximbank, senior executives and executive presidents, colleagues, my dear colleagues at Afreximbank, and friends and partners, AFNET representatives, ladies and gentlemen of the press, captains of industries, royal fathers and kings here present, welcome to the penultimate day of the AAM 2025. Now, it gives me great pleasure to reintroduce my fellow MC for this year's annual meetings, Afreximbank annual meetings. As you know, and as you've seen, she's a dynamic communicator. Please welcome back Marie-Angèle Touré.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mark, for pronouncing my name with such a French accent.
De rien.
Excellences, distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, Permettez-moi à mon tour de vous souhaiter la bienvenue dans le cadre de cette troisième journée des 32e Assemblées annuelles d'Afreximbank dans cette magnifique ville qu'est Abuja, au Nigeria. Une troisième journée que nous vivons, je le constate, avec toujours autant d'inspiration, d'implication, de motivation et d'engagement porté par l'élan d'une Afrique déterminée, résiliente et tournée vers l'avenir. Donc merci à vous d'être présents, d'être là. Merci d'incarner par votre présence ce panafricanisme concret et stratégique. Et laissez-moi vous dire que cette journée vous réserve de belles surprises, des moments forts et des interventions inattendues. But before we start, I would like you to watch a quick highlight video and then we will come back and officially start the ceremony. Thank you very much.
Honor to join you at this 32nd Afreximbank annual meeting convened under the timely theme, Building the Future on Decades of Resilience.
Through the African Trade Gateway, we are creating a one-stop digital superhighway to reduce trade friction and enhance Africa's trade internally and with the global partners.
This is Africa's time. This is Africa's century. And as a continent, by 2050, Africa will likely have become the third largest economic bloc in the world, passing Europe.
Years or so that we seem to have got right, and I hope we will continue to build on it, is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. That, I believe, we have got it right.
Wow, you can feel it, right? Get a round of applause, please. Not just for the people that are on the stage, but for yourselves. We are really making what others would say is impossible. We're making it possible here today. Now, as I said, this is day 3, and every day has a sub-theme. And today's sub-theme asks a vital question. It says, can Africa rise in a fractured world? Well, certainly one of the things that gives Africa a bright future is strong institutions like Afreximbank. Just look at what they've done in 10 years of Professor Oramah, when Professor Oramah has been at the helm. Afreximbank assets have skyrocketed from 6 billion in 2015 to 40 billion plus by 2025. That's a 6-fold leap. They delivered consistent year-on-year growth earnings in profits and dividends, even when the global economy got rocky. They've mobilized a whopping $75 billion for Africa's energy sector. That's including $6 billion for refineries right here in Nigeria, Angola, Senegal. They've been boosting local independence when it comes to energy. They've introduced innovative financing models that made energy access fairer, and they've sped up access to industrialization. So much more I could go on with, but let me please introduce someone who's going to articulate it even better, because your first speaker today is the Executive Vice President of Governance, Legal and Corporate Services at Afreximbank. Now, since joining Afreximbank in 1996, he's been one of the main driving forces behind those successes I mentioned, championing innovative solutions and helping shape Africa's trade and development journey. I want you to give a robust Pan-African round of applause for Mr. George Elombi.
Thanks very much for the very elaborate protocol. So, as is the tradition here, I'll stand by that protocol. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to welcome you to the third day of these events, the annual meetings holding in this beautiful city of Abuja, a city which has made its contribution to the history of African ambitions, the city that gave its name to Africa's most ambitious economic integration plan, the treaty establishing the African Economic Community, or more commonly known as the Abuja Treaty, the Abuja Plan of Action. There could therefore be no better location for us to address the questions of multilateralism and the role of Africa, and more particularly to deal with the very question we came here to address: can Africa rise in a very fractured world? That's the theme of today's. But the first 2 days of our seminars, the conferences, the panel discussions we have had have been truly insightful. We have taken the time to reflect on Africa's economic journey post-independence and discussed our collective ambitions under the AFCTA and Agenda 2063. We have heard from African and global leaders about the challenges we must overcome in the face of increasing uncertainty and the partnerships we must forge to ensure an integrated continent. We have seen that within an ongoing global fractious world lie opportunities for Africa. If we act decisively and strategically, then we can make the gains of those opportunities. The fragmentation of global trade underscores the urgency of accelerating the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area and boosting intra-African trade to realize the potential that we all expect for the 1.7 billion people in our continent. We have also witnessed how Afreximbank's 3 decades journey has helped turn adversity into opportunity, and how our initiatives are shaping Africa's growth. We have seen how Afreximbank has transformed from a dream to a global institution, driving Africa's trade-led development and integration. Conversations over the past 2 days have also underscored a consensus that in a world increasingly characterized by nationalism and protectionism, with an international financial architecture that often fails woefully to support the development interests of the global South, economic progress in Africa and the Caribbean, of that other part of global Africa, to which we will now have to pay more serious attention than we've done before. So the development interest and economic progress in our regions will largely depend on our regional institutions. Much time was spent on our regional institutions. Our hope today is that you spend even more time on the regional institutions. The sessions you had yesterday concluded that we must build an African and global financial architecture that will serve our development efforts rather than relegate us. So today, on this very last day, ladies and gentlemen, on today's discussions, you will again be invited to focus on the role of our institutions. And the institutions are important. They're important because of the very theme of this event. We are building our future on the basis of our resilient past, our own resilience. And today, we're talking about the fractured world. The role of the institutions in helping to overcome those fractures is very critical. They are critical to restitute, to rebuild, and to seek what it is that we need to move our trade, to move the development ahead. We will consider the policy relevance of these institutions, why they should and they must cooperate, and why, in this fractured world, they should drive your global African agenda. The unity in action with the Caribbean Africans and all Africans elsewhere. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we close this, the invitation is that you give considerable attention to the discussions as they arise. Trade, as a trade institution, we believe in Afreximbank, that the question of our development would only be done through trade. The AFCTA was established for us to trade amongst ourselves. We can only trade amongst ourselves if we produce that which we trade, for we cannot trade unless we have the products to trade. We can only trade what we produce. And how do we then get into this production phase? How do we combine Professor Mabubani's idea of MPH, not miles per hour, as he said yesterday, but meritocracy, pragmatism, and honesty? How do we combine this very simple motto with the simple execution capacity of what Mr. Gagan said of his Arise platforms? How do we approach each little sector by sector? Should we do so by emphasizing broad principles or by taking a sectoral approach where, to resolve the issues, we take the sectors one by each and see how we integrate them? That's going to be part of the discussion here. Should we in Ghana seek to transform, to process the cocoa there in Ghana, and then take the good and deal with the good in the hope that as we deal with cocoa processing, we're also going to deal with the infrastructure that surrounds it. And that same infrastructure, the transport infrastructure, the port infrastructure, the power you need to process the cocoa, and that all of that will also serve other sectors. Should we in Côte d'Ivoire do the same? Take the cocoa sector, manage it, take the oilseed sector in Côte d'Ivoire, deal with the demands of that sector. Should we in Southern Africa, in most of West Africa, in Mali, in Zimbabwe, where the mines are, in Congo, in Cameroon, should we take each mining sector, deal with the mining sector? We are told that steel will soon become very important as the rest of the world seeks to militarize, as the world seeks military independence. Then the question of steel becomes important. Should we not start processing? You will be listening to Mr. Dangote today about what processing means. Perhaps we draw the lessons from there, how his single project has integrated many other areas and developed the infrastructure which has been used by other sectors. So our call to you today is to invite you into these discussions, to take part in them, to walk away with something. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third day of your events. Thank you very much for giving us these 5 minutes.
Merci encore. Thank you very much to Dr. George Elombi. Another round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen, for setting the tone this morning with clarity, vision, and purpose. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are deeply honored to welcome a stateswoman whose voice resonates across Africa and beyond. Nous avons l'immense privilège d'accueillir une figure de proue de la diplomatie africaine, fervente avocate de la souveraineté collective et convaincue de l'intégration africaine. Merci d'accueillir chaleureusement. Please join me in welcoming, ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency Selma Malika Haddadi, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, representing His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission.
Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers and Governors or their representatives here present today, President of Afreximbank, Pr Benedict Oramah, Vice President of Afreximbank, distinguished Dr. Elombi and other Vice Presidents here present, heads of regional and multilateral institutions, members of the diaspora, distinguished guest partners, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly observed, good morning. It is a great honor to be here in Abuja, the vibrant heart of West Africa, for this year's Afreximbank annual meetings, a gathering of vision, purpose and ambition for the African continent. I wish to extend on behalf of the Chairperson, His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, and on my own behalf, the African Union's appreciation, deepest appreciation, to Afreximbank for your enduring commitment to Africa's development and your bold leadership in the face of adversity. Thank you, Afreximbank. The theme before us, can Africa rise in a fractured world, is not just a question. It is the challenge of this moment. It is a call to courage, vision, resilience, and collective responsibility. And it is timely. But how? First, in a fractured world, there is Africa's promise. We meet at a time of profound intersecting global crises. The multilateral system is under strain, global trade is fragmenting, climate disasters are intensifying, food insecurity is rising, and conflicts are multiplying. Trust in global institutions is eroding under these pressures. Yet, amid these turbulences, Africa stands as a paradox of vulnerability and promise. We are the world's youngest continent, rich in natural resources and even richer in human potential. We have withered economic shocks, pandemics, and heavy debt burdens, and we remain standing, resilient, and hopeful. The question is not whether Africa can rise, but how we will make that rise on our own terms. Second, integration and Agenda 2063, the blueprint for Africa's rise. Africa's answer to a fractured world lies in greater integration, not division. Our flagship project, the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is the most powerful tool we have to realize this vision of an integrated continent. AFCFTA connects 55 nations into one common market, creating a foundation for economic growth and development. This vision is anchored in the Africa's Union Agenda 2063, our blueprint for transformation of Africa into a global powerhouse. Agenda 2063 is coming to life through investments in regional value chains, efforts to digitize trade and finance, and partnerships that prioritize African solutions. AFCFTA is the economic engine of this vision, with institutions like Afreximbank serving as a catalyst partner. Already, we are seeing signs of progress. Pilot trade shipments under AFCFTA's Guided Trade Initiative have begun, and customs protocols are improving. Small and medium enterprises, especially those led by women and young people, are finding new markets across the continent. Intra-African trade has now surpassed 200 billion USD, thanks to, in part, Afreximbank's Pan-African payment and settlement system. Enabling cross-border transactions, integration is not just an ideal, but a practical path to shared prosperity. Third, financing Africa's future with homegrown solutions. Africa cannot rise without inclusive and sovereign financing. For too long, external creditors imposed conditions that did not serve us. So Africa is charting a different path. Afreximbank shows how homegrown financial solutions can work. It provides counter-cyclical loans during crisis, supports regional supply chains, and innovates with platforms like PAPS and Mansa. These efforts prove that Africa can finance its own development. The African Union Commission is actively championing domestic resource mobilization to fund our priorities. Africa loses an estimated 89 billion every year to illicit financial outflows, money that should be building schools and improving health care. We must stop this hemorrhage through stronger governance and regional cooperation, and reforms to expand tax bases and curb illicit flows. We also have untapped pools of capital at home. African pensions funds collectively manage about 777 billion in assets. We should channel more of these domestic savings into African infrastructure and businesses. We also advocate for a fairer global financial system, a stronger Africa voice in the IMF and World Bank, and an end to biased credit rating that unfairly raise our borrowing costs. We are also putting in place our own rating agency. Fourth, harnessing youth power and diaspora strength. From Lagos to Los Angeles, African music and film are captivating the world. The influence is more than entertainment. It is soft power and economic opportunity, showing Africa's bold emergence on the world stage. To fully unlock the potential of our young population, we must invest in quality education, expand technical and vocational training, and ensure digital inclusion so every young African can access opportunities. The African Union is supporting these goals through initiatives like a revitalized AU Youth Volunteers Corps and new continent-wide programs for internship and job placements. Africa's diaspora is also a tremendous asset. Millions of Africans abroad send home over 100 billion in remittances each year and bring global expertise and networks. We must engage them as true partners in Africa's rise and co-creators of it. I urge our governments and banks to establish diaspora bonds and investment funds to channel diaspora wealth into African development. Our youth and diaspora are integral to our future, and their full inclusion is imperative. A continent divided cannot rise. Fifth, facing the climate crisis and demanding justice. Africa is on the front line of the climate crisis, despite contributing the least to it. Our people endure droughts, floods, and desertification. These are not just environmental issues, but existential threats to lives and economies in the continent. We must invest in low-carbon energy for growth and build climate-resilient infrastructure to protect our communities. At the same time, we must demand climate justice and hold wealthy nations accountable. They have pledged to increase climate finance for developing countries, aiming for $300 billion per year by 2035, and ultimately 1.3 trillion by that date. Africa will insist these promises are kept, with timely and adequate support to confirm the climate emergency. We must shield African economies from other climate policies. Unilateral moves like carbon tariffs could hurt African exporters. We must ensure our industries can green their operations and remain competitive. Africa should not be penalized for embracing sustainability. We need support to adapt without sacrificing growth. Sixth, a united voice in a multipolar world. The world is no longer bipolar or unipolar. It is multipolar, and Africa must stand as a confident pole of influence. The inclusion of the African Union as permanent member of the G20 is a major diplomatic milestone, recognizing Africa's global importance. But we must translate this achievement into real influence. Africa's 55 nations should speak with one voice in international forums, from climate summits to trade negotiations to United Nations debates. With over 1.4 billion people and a growing economy weight, Africa can move from the periphery of the decision-making to its core through unity. Our collective strength will ensure that global decisions better reflect Africa's interests. Seventh, sustaining the rise, leadership, and unity. So can Africa rise in a fractured world? The truth is, Africa is already rising. We see it in our increasing intra-African trade, our financial innovations, and the creativity and determination of our people. We are rising because we choose cooperation over conflict, self-reliance over dependence, and unity over fragmentation. However, this progress is not automatic or guaranteed. Sustaining our rise requires accountable leadership, effective institutions, inclusive policies, and respectful partnerships. In short, it demands good governance and an unwavering commitment to include everyone in our growth. Africa's rise will not happen by accident. We will rise by design, by determination, and by collective action. And finally, rising by resilience and design. For too long, Africa's story has been framed by adversity. Yet, each challenge, from colonization to conflict, from pandemics to economic exclusion, has made us more resilient and more united. That resilience is the foundation of our future, and now is the time to build upon it. Today, on behalf of the African Union, I issue a clarion call to Africans everywhere. It is time for us to shape the future we want together, unlock Africa's own capital and invest in our development, finance transformative infrastructure across the continent, invest in African entrepreneurs, especially youth and women, digitize financial system to boost intra-African trade, build a self-reliant continental economy. To our diaspora, your knowledge, networks, and resources are vital. We urge you to come home with your vision and expertise by partnering with African institutions. And here I would like to really welcome the second Africa CARICOM summit that will be held later this year in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Together, let us shape Africa's destiny in line with Agenda 2063, so the next generations inherit a continent of prosperity and pride. Africa does not lack potential. In a fractured world, let Africans be each other's answer. United in purpose and conviction, Africa will not just rise, Africa will soar. Let us rise resilient, resourceful, and ready. Let us build the Africa we deserve. May Africa rise. May Africa unite. May Africa lead. Thank you. Merci, shukran, asante sana, obrigado. God bless Africa.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency Ambassador Selma Malaika Haddadi, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, representing the Chairperson, of course, of the AUC, and also thank you to George Elombi at Afreximbank there for getting us off to a good start there. Now we're going to move over to the Caribbean, our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. Her Excellency Dr. Carla Barnett leads CARICOM. It's a 20-nation regional bloc advancing Caribbean economic integration, development, and global partnerships. Most recently, collaborating with Afreximbank to boost trade, investment, and sustainability initiatives. Please welcome her to the stage as she delivers her remarks. Dr. Carla Barnett, Secretary General of CARICOM.
Good morning, everyone. I will stand on all of the protocols that have already been established and simply say that I am extremely pleased to be here today for the 32nd annual meeting of Afreximbank and to reflect on the theme, Progressive Unity in a Fractured World, Building a Global African Coalition for Development. Thanks to Afreximbank and thanks to the government of Nigeria for all of the courtesies that have been extended to my delegation since we have been here. It is really very much appreciated. The globalization phenomenon of the 21st century was expected to enhance North-South relations and the interdependence of people worldwide. It was also anticipated that it would bring prosperity in the developing world through increased efficiency of industries and competitiveness to drive growth and development. Instead, the world has devolved into what the World Economic Forum in its Global Risk Report 2025 has described as an increasingly fractured global landscape with escalating geopolitical, environmental, societal, and technological challenges. Amidst these challenges, Africa, with a significant demographic advantage, natural resource base, untapped carbon markets, and renewable energy, remains poised to become the next frontier of global economic growth. To realize this potential, Africa will not only need to harness its diversity, but also leverage its strategic assets to mitigate some of the geopolitical and geoeconomic risks emanating from an extremely polarized global environment. In this regard, the concept of progressive unity, characterized by prioritizing shared values, collective vision, dialogue, and collaborative action, must become the guiding principle for Africa's interactions on the global scale or global stage. Such interactions will require bold, strategic choices rooted in African agency, innovative policies, and strong global partnerships. this fractured environment, this is an opportunity for Africa and the Caribbean, which is the home of a large contingent of the African diaspora, the sixth region, to build common cause on shared values and shared interests and forge a path towards mutually beneficial collective action. The divisions created during the period of European colonization of Africa and the Caribbean would remain and become even further entrenched without a focused intent on breaking down the barriers among us. Both regions have already started this journey to embrace a collective vision and to create a new model of collaboration in our mutual interests. Like the Caribbean, Africa's well-being is inextricably linked to global prosperity. However, amidst trade tensions triggered by a rise in protectionist measures and growing policy uncertainty, global economic growth is now projected to slow down in 2025 and to remain tepid in the short to medium term. This has caused a significant downward revision in the growth outlook for almost all countries, including in Africa and in the Caribbean, thereby making progress on key development goals more difficult. More particularly, this prediction for global prosperity is accompanied by multiple shocks, such as the downturn in global demand, lower prices for some key commodities, higher global borrowing costs, and constraints on external funding. These have significant implications for the growth and development trajectory of developing countries. Of grave concern is the breakdown of the rules-based international trading system, the disruption in trade and investment flows, and the increased decoupling of traditional trading partners from the current providers of development support. Developing countries like those in Africa and the Caribbean are the hardest hit, as heightened geopolitical tensions and reduced trade lead to a fall in foreign direct investment and the knowledge spillovers that are so critical to driving inclusive growth and sustainable development. These geopolitical and geoeconomic developments require careful handling. There needs to be positive alignment between economic and political interests and a redefinition of global partnerships into mechanisms that foster inclusive growth, sustainable development, and economic and climate resilience for developing countries. Building resilience requires that Africa, like the Caribbean, retain access to affordable, long-term concessional financing from multilateral development institutions. The Bridgetown Initiative, version 3.0, provides a common platform for joint advocacy on the reform of the multilateral financial system, whose governance model continues to mirror outdated political alliances and economic constructs. More than anything else, this situation serves as a basis for a common cause between Africa and the Caribbean. While the current realignment of global geopolitical and geoeconomic interests will continue to pose significant challenges, it also creates opportunities for Africa and the Caribbean to strengthen cooperation to achieve common development goals. As I noted during the first CARICOM Africa Summit hosted by Kenya and held virtually in September of 2021, CARICOM is committed to strengthening this cooperation and building a mutually beneficial and stable partnership. Opportunities exist in such areas as trade and investment promotion, development finance, climate change, reparatory justice, mass media, and increased people-to-people contact. Moreover, a strong and mutually beneficial partnership between Africa and the Caribbean, underscored by the principle of progressive unity, can become the springboard for broader South-South cooperation that leverages comparative advantages, thereby creating strong economic growth and development trajectories. We look forward to exploring these possibilities during the second CARICOM Africa Summit to be held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, on CARICOM Africa Day on September 7th of this year. The foundations of African agency and the building of successful strategic partnerships have already been laid. Admission of the African Union as a permanent member of the G20. This gives Africa an active voice on key development issues, key global economic issues. The establishment of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the world's largest free trade area that is intended to create a single market for goods and services on the continent, is a major step towards, among other things, reducing intra-African trade barriers and developing African value chains and economic prosperity. This institutional platform, along with mutually beneficial partnerships and alliances, will advance the ecosystem for building a global African coalition for development, including the Caribbean. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause for Her Excellency, the CARICOM Secretary General, Dr. Carla Barnett. The Dangote refinery is a true phenomenon. Deep into the Lekki Peninsula of Lagos State here in Nigeria, it's a real game changer. And Afreximbank has been instrumental in realizing this juggernaut of progress, not just for Nigeria, but for the whole of Africa. It is really a blueprint on self-determination when it comes to energy, when it comes to refined energy. And Dangote is literally powering energy independence with this incredible structure. And we're very, very proud of it. It's creating thousands of jobs as well, and turning Nigeria from an importer to an exporter of refined products. It's a true game changer for regional prosperity and opportunity. Take a look at this video.
There are very few of Raji Dangote in the marketplace.
In an economy that wants to grow, you must have entrepreneurs that think big and dare.
Mr. Dangote, you are putting together one of the largest ever investments in Africa.
Aliko Dangote, most famous industrialist and investor in Africa.
My childhood life was great, really, because I was raised by my late grandfather, who was actually a businessman. Right from childhood, I had this interest of being or becoming a business. I've always wanted to work for myself, make things that people believe that they are impossible, make them possible.
I guess anybody who goes there will feel the same way. You can imagine that a 650,000 barrels per day refinery is huge. It's way beyond my own imagination.
Today, the refinery we are building is the largest ever single train in the world, not in Africa. Yes, 650,000 barrels.
That resonates with us, resonates with our founding principle, the can-do spirit of the African. We have to support the big idea of our brother Aliko. We are backing it because we believe that it will change things.
The world has changed completely. You don't produce value add, forget it. You don't get anything.
We must industrialize. And that's, you can see that we already have an alignment with the Dangote Group.
There's nothing that is as good as a bank understanding your needs so that you don't have to talk much. They understood our own business. When we explained to them what and what we are doing, they encourage us quite a lot. They are our major funding partner today as we speak.
This project is unique from a lot of sense. We are producing a Euro 5, the highest level of standard that can be produced over here. Look at this piece of pipe. So this is the power plant area. So we see the shorter chimney is linked to the gas turbine, and then we have boilers and steam turbine on the other side. And that big building that you see over there is the main substation. It's basically where the main power goes, and from there feeding all the substation for each of the unit.
Whenever the president comes here, he's always very happy to see the kind of development that we do. But he tells me, he says, Captain, this development is development that I know that you can do. But he says, what will really give me great happiness is that before you decide to leave Nigeria and go, you give me 7 captains like you. And I want all 7 of them to be Nigerian. So he is more interested in us creating a leadership talent pipeline.
What we are doing at the moment is to ensure that the refinery is built to the standard that it should be built to. We are trying to ensure that there are no mistakes in the piping, that no valves is missing, no nuts or bolts or whatever. So that's what we try to ensure every single day.
The whole thing is not about you amassing wealth. It's about you adding value to society. It's one of the things that when you ask me when I go to bed, what do I see? So this is the kind of picture that I have of the Africa of my dream.
We need to groom people not to be afraid of business. We need to groom people to understand what they are trying to do. We need to have people who have a vision. Afreximbank is walking the talk of transforming Africa.
If you had come 10 years back and you had said that a gentleman by the name of Mr. Dangote is going to build a 650,000 multi-billion project in Nigeria on barren land, we would have just laughed at you because it has never been done on the African continent. Now that the project is completed, I hope that this will be an example to many other entrepreneurs, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent, that anything is possible.
What an amazing video. À présent, mesdames et messieurs, une conversation très spéciale qui incarne à la fois les défis de notre temps et les immenses possibilités de l'Afrique. Face à vous, dans quelques instants, sur cette scène, assis sur ce fauteuil, se trouvera un homme dont le nom résonne bien au-delà des frontières du continent. Alhaji Aliko Dangote, un visionnaire. Vous pouvez l'applaudir si vous le souhaitez. Un visionnaire industriel, un bâtisseur d'empire et surtout un infatigable croyant en la destinée africaine. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome a man whose name is not only known, it is deeply respected. He's a builder, a visionary, a source of inspiration. His journey isn't just a success story, it's a blueprint for what economic sovereignty can look like across our continent. So today he will share with us his insight on the path to making Africa great again. And guiding this pivotal discussion, please welcome Eleni Jokos, CNN's foremost voice on Africa's economic landscape. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. Please welcome Alhaji Aliko Dangote. Fantastic to be in Nigeria. We always have a good time.
Thank you.
Yes,
Always
and
great to be here.
And every time I see you, there's more happening, and you are revolutionizing so many things across the value chain. But I want to quickly start with our topic. The path to making Africa great again. And funny enough, it's the same acronym as America, right? MAGA?
Yes.
Which is
Make America great.
Yeah, exactly. So make Africa great again. But when you hear that, what is the first thing, Alhaji, that comes to mind in terms of the path to making that happen? It's about industrialization. It's about local procurement. It's about value chains. But how do we do it?
Well, the only way for us to make it is, talking about make America great. Now we have to turn into make Africa great. The one way for us to make Africa great is for us to produce our minerals before they are exported so that we can actually create jobs. Because the issue is that once we remain a dumping ground, we will never be able to create jobs. And, I'm of the believer that once you continue to import, you are importing poverty and exporting jobs out. So the real issue for us is that now President Trump has actually set the face where he's saying make America great or America first. So since it is America first, we should also say Africa first. We should try and create jobs. The real reason why we have actually not flown as much as Asia, Asians, they have quite a lot of old entrepreneurs, old money, and majority of them, they believe in their own continent, be it from Thailand, Indonesia, and other areas. So most of them, they invest their money at home. Both people who have made money legally, people who have made money illegally, the money doesn't leave the countries. They invest it there.
So you're saying that's what we're lacking in Africa, right?
Yeah, well, in Africa, the issue is that, yes, some people, they do make money legally. Some of them, they make their own money illegally. But majority of people, they take the money out of the continent. So if I'm not investing at home, how do I convince somebody to come and partner with me and invest and make Africa great? It's difficult.
So let's look at the President Trump model. So America first, the tariffs, the confrontation, wanting to reindustrialize America. I mean, it's created so much debate and actually what we call global trade war. But it's really interesting to look at the dynamics of this, because to industrialize, you've got to take tough decisions. Is there anything that America is doing right now where you're saying, you know what, that would work for the African context to ensure that we see more industrialization? Do you think that tariffs would work?
Well, you see, the issue is that, let me explain something to you that you need to know. When Trump always say, okay, fine, make America great, what he's trying to do is actually trying to create jobs. Some people might not agree with me, but I fully agree with him because I've been through that route where now we try to do industries and they keep saying that, no, open up your market. When you open up your market, it's like you now going to bed, you open up your windows, you go to bed, you are not going to be, you won't be able to have a good sleep because you'll be disturbed by mosquitoes. So, when you now say you open up this thing, you don't have what it takes to allow every single damn thing to be dumped into your own market. That is what you call a fair competition. That's also what you call dumping. Okay, because if I have excess, I will take it at half price to go and dump in somebody's market. So I make sure that the country does not produce what they need.
So what I find fascinating with what you're saying, because one way that people are describing things, it's like becoming a lot more protectionist, which is bad. But actually the way you're saying it is that we shouldn't be a dumping ground, and there's a distinction between the two things.
Let me give you an example. He has done quite more than that. People maybe know about the steel, aluminium, where he ended off, he tried 25% tariff, and then later on he said, no, 50%. If he doesn't do that, American steel industry will shut down.
It's true.
The two things that don't allow industries to thrive, especially in Africa, there are two things. One is lack of electricity. Second is inconsistencies in government policies.
So let's talk about the policies that need to change. And I actually go back to the way your cement business flourished. And then President Obasanjo took, I think, what many people consider as a bold decision. And it wasn't just a tariff on imported cement at the time. It was quite interesting because it was about backward integration if you do import.
That's right.
So, and I really want to unpack that because I wonder if you can scale that idea across other sectors and whether that's workable as a policy.
Well, as a policy, what President Obasanjo did was actually, great. I mean, Obasanjo at that time when he was president, I think maybe he sleeps about 2-3 hours. He called me 4:30 in the morning and asked me that, hey, look, Aliko, I've checked. Nigeria now is about number 2 in import of cement in the world, after US. I'm not going to allow that to continue. How do we address this issue? I said, okay, fine. Let me, Mr. President, remove my Dangote cap and put Nigeria's cap. And I will tell you what to do. Maybe, why don't you say, okay, let's go and do backward integration. If you don't set up a factory, you cannot import. So all of us, we now run to set up industries. I know that our bankers were very small at that time, but we went very aggressive. Nigeria was producing totally 1.9 million tons, and we started building a plant of 5 million tons at the same time. But all our bankers were very, very supportive, and we carry on with that. But fast forward, what the benefit of that policy is that today you don't have to import cement, you can buy cement. Nigeria, from 2007 to date, Nigeria produces more than 60 million tons of cement.
And is the largest exporter
and
in
now
Africa.
Also, Nigeria is the largest exporter of cement in Africa. Thirdly, as we speak, when we finish our Itori factory, it's 100% for export, and Nigeria will not earn less than $500 million of just exporting cement.
Brilliant. Let's shift focus to the refinery because you're exporting jet fuel to the United States, correct?
Not only to Asia too.
But to Asia as well?
Asia,
I mean, that's
United
such a feat.
States.
Nigeria is exporting jet fuel to these major economies and fertilizer to the United States?
Yes, actually, 37% of our fertilizer goes to US.
I mean, that's incredible to think about because it shows what actually can be done. And, this was a mammoth project. We've spoken about how a Herculean task it was for you. And I wonder how it's going from an economics perspective, financial perspective, and whether, looking back now, because it's always, every single year, there's more hindsight. Was it completely worth it? Would you do it again? What's your answer this time round?
Well, I think I will do other things again. But like what I said, when we launched the refinery project, luckily for us, we actually didn't have a full idea of what we are doing. If we knew what we are going to go through, we wouldn't have tried it. But it's good that we didn't know. So that's why. So at least we've been able to, deliver. But it was really tasking, humongous, and I must say that without the support of our bankers, led by Afreximbank, the Access, Zenith, First Bank, it wouldn't have been possible at all.
So, let me ask you this. What's your biggest challenge that you face right now? Buying of crude in Nigeria, selling off-takers. What is your biggest issue? And how does that speak to pushing African champions locally, whether you felt that you've had that support? I want you to give me a sense of what that experience is right now.
Well, the issue is that we African champions, we need to understand that we are the only people that can make Africa great.
Yeah.
Nobody will do that for us. So as such, we need to make sure that we concentrate, we believe in our own continent. Of course, There will be ups and downs here and there, but life is all about up and downs, and sometimes, yes, you succeed, sometimes you don't. But majority of, of us, once you concentrate, you really know what you are doing, you'll be successful. It's difficult, and you don't really expect anybody to hail you. People who made America great, it is only now that people are hailing them. But at the time when they were really pushing, trying to create all the Vanderbilts, the Ford and co, nobody was hailing them at that time. So it is very difficult, for people to hail you while you are doing things. But on hindsight, when you look at it, people will now appreciate. You see, the job of people like us is not about really amassing wealth. It is about creating wealth.
Yeah.
How do you create wealth? You create jobs, you make sure that you expand the economy. Other investors will see what you are doing, and they will also join. Like what I keep saying, majority of our own countries, especially in Africa, they keep going around to look for foreign investors. Foreign investors, they just don't come that easy. So what you need to do is to encourage domestic investors. When they are doing well, that is the invitation for international investors.
I want to talk about the global geopolitical upheaval. I'm trying to think of a diplomatic word that, describes what we're seeing globally. And it feels in many ways the African continent, African countries are stuck in the middle of sort of this to and fro of the spheres of influence that are shifting dramatically. The United States wants to ban many African countries from visas and travel. It hasn't been implemented and instituted, but there's a threat. And Nigeria is on that list. Angola just hosted the US-Africa Summit. And Angola is also on the list. And I just wonder what it means for you as an African industrialist, looking at the United States' lack of focus on the continent, and also, frankly, the policy, which is mind-boggling in so many ways. What do you think?
Well, if you look at it today, why do you want to bother going to the US? You should,
the US should want to come to Africa because you've got the resources,
yeah, of course,
right?
You should remain at home. We have 60% of the world's arable land.
Yeah.
Agriculture is not cheap. Okay, we have all the mineral sources from gold, lithium, diamonds, everything. We have it here. Yeah. So all what you need to do is to start giving conditions to people. Don't come and take my cocoa and process over there, and you come now and sell the chocolate to me 20 times the cost of that chocolate. So let us make our continent a productive continent. We're the only continent that has actually have growth. If you look at it today, Europe, with respect to them, there's no growth in Europe. Yeah. They've reached a certain distance. So they need Africa to grow.
Do you think that that's a good partner for the continent, the Europeans? I think it's China, is it Russia? Is it Saudi and the UAE? Who's the best partner for the continent right now? Because whether we like it or not, and frankly, there's always been a scramble for Africa's resources. Who's going to capture that part of, getting as many commodities as possible so that they can process locally? The mind shift in Africa is changing, but you still have a scramble, and you can feel it. It is evident in terms of influence. So who's the best partner?
I think now we have a couple of players, but the main Maradona in the field is Afreximbank. If we can have 10 institutions like Afreximbank, it will be totally a different story. Totally a different story. We can actually turn Africa into a heaven in the next 5 years. It doesn't take time.
So
because like what I keep saying, you need to think big, then you grow big. You think small, you never grow.
Okay, but the reality is, right now, we're still relying on foreign partners. To create more Afreximbanks is going to take some time. So what's your solution?
Well, the solution is that right now people have seen exactly what what they've been doing. We don't expect the international banks to do, but we should also make sure that we have you see, for us to grow, we need a very strong financial institutions. We need to have good manufacturing base. We need to also face agriculture. All the other artificial intelligence and co, they will follow. It's part of the growth. But once we do that, we focus on our own mineral sources. I am telling you, Africa will be totally a different story. You know, people now always come and talk about corruption. Of course, Africa is not the only place that you have corruption. Corruption is all over the place. The only difference is that our corrupt people, when they steal the money, they take it, they fly the money out of the continent. If they continue to invest here, fine, then the economy will grow.
So you're saying if you want to be corrupt, please reinvest that money in Africa?
But, yeah? Let me give you an example. I apologize with respect to maybe countries like Indonesia before. I'm not talking about now. During Suharto, are you saying that there was no corruption? Of course, there was corruption. In all Thailand, corruption everywhere. But they were able to grow just because they did not do what we are doing in Africa, taking the money out of the continent, out of their Asian region. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not saying that I encourage. All what I'm saying is that there's no society, whether it's America, whether it's Europe, everywhere that you think of, there is corruption. But our own is totally different, where now you deprive your country of the money, you deprive your family of the money, because you won't tell your family you've stolen money. So, you deprive everybody, then you now go and hide the money somewhere. When you die, the money will go into the banking system.
This is brilliant. I've never thought of corruption in this way.
To tell you the truth, okay, like now, somebody was asking me a question. I said some people came to visit our own fertilizer, and I was telling them that, I've said it before in one forum, that in the next 40 months, Africa will not import fertilizer from anywhere. We have a very aggressive trajectory right now. We want to put Dangote fertilizer to be the largest producer of fertilizer, of urea, bigger and higher than Qatar. And watch me, 40 months. Give me 40 months.
We'll be back on stage discussing that. Okay,
we'll be back on stage.
The AFCFTA Secretary General Wamkele Mene was telling me the trade finance deficit is as big as the infrastructure deficit that the continent is facing, and we need to tap into that money. So where's it going to come from? You solved part of this with the corruption. We should be reinvesting. I like that. I don't know how much of a gap that's going to fill, but trade finance is a big issue. Does that worry you?
It doesn't really worry me. That's what I keep talking about. This is not because really I'm here attending Afreximbank's something. Because when you look at the vision and also the mission of Afreximbank is to connect all these dots. The trade financing is there. They are not the only ones. There is also Africa Finance Corporation. There are other banks. Once they build, if they are going to raise capital, believe me honestly, today, even if I'm not going to make money, I would rather invest in banks that have the same vision like Afreximbank, because that's the only way that we can develop our continent. Forget about most of these other banks. Their interest is not for Africa to grow. We must make sure we take it as our own focus, as our vision, that look, how do we make Africa great? Africa can only be made great by Africans.
Can I ask you this? With all this narrative that we're seeing out of the US, and if African leaders truly adopt this, let's make Africa great. Let's Africa first. We know that you don't want us to grow, but actually we're not going to accept that. We're not going to sign bad deals anymore. We're not going to accept extraction without actually some kind of processing on the continent. If there's a mind shift change, do you think there'll be global pushback towards the continent? Because there's one thing that's always been certain, the hypocrisy and the way that the African continent, African leaders have been treated, unfortunately, is still pretty much the same. And that's very worrying.
When we start insisting on our minerals to be processed in our continent, you see the rush. Everybody rushed to come down here. Don't take our mineral sources, process them here, create value, generate jobs and growth. And it can happen.
I've got another question. Your refinery, and we were talking backstage about this, and you're doing something very revolutionary that no one's ever done before. And I want you to explain how you're thinking.
I would also like to extend our sincere gratitude to the government of the Arab Republic of Egypt as the host of the bank's headquarters, as well as to His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for their very unflinching support, always being the first to pay for equity whenever we call. And whenever we needed support, they're always there. And we thank you very much. As I begin to wind down my tenure, I must extend special thanks to shareholders for their confidence in me. Sincere thanks are also due to African governments who have remained steadfast supporters of their institution, to our clients, corporate, central and commercial banks, SMEs, creative industry entrepreneurs and policy institutions, including the African Union Commission, the AFCFTA Secretariat, the UN Economic Commission for Africa, the African Development Bank, World Trade Organization, the International Trade Center, members of the Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions, and many others. Your collaboration with and support to me and the bank have been nothing less than stellar, and thank you very much. Special thanks to our funding partners who have remained steadfast with the bank over the years. And these include all the export credit agencies, development finance institutions, as well as international commercial banks, as well as local commercial banks with whom we have worked very, very closely and ensured that your bank remained solidly liquid all through the past 10 years. My deep appreciation to our board of directors of Afreximbank, who have been the pillars on which the decade-long progress has been built. I thank them for working this long and fruitful journey with us, always allowing us to make mistakes, always giving us support and showing us the way when we do make the mistake so that we can course correct. I thank you. I also thank all my colleagues at Afreximbank for their unfettered commitment and support, which enabled us to deliver on our shared commitment to the continent. When I took office, I told you we are all joint mandated lead arrangers. So as joint mandated lead arrangers, we have made significant personal sacrifices for the bank and our continent. I thank you and your families for all the sacrifices and support you've given to me, to the bank, and to the continent. Again, I urge you to remain resolute in your commitment. You must remain courageous and determined. Africa must remain your passion and priority. We must not rest until the dignity of all Africans is restored. It is time to thank my friends who have over the years shown immense understanding as work demands trained our relationships. I thank all of them for always being understanding and being there always when I needed their support, notwithstanding that after getting that support, I'll disappear because of work. Thank you. My family bore the full brunt of the demands of the responsibilities I took on as president. My brothers and sisters, as well as my in-laws, deserve many thanks for their support, understanding, and guidance. I'm proud that my 3 daughters, or 2 of them, are here. But the 3 of them accommodated my absences with grace. My wife, my rock of Gibraltar, was the 3. My wife, my rock of Gibraltar, was the 3 that made the forest in the past 10 years. I'm pleased I can now say to all of them, my children and my wife, that they can now have their father and husband back. I thank you for your kind attention.
President Oramah, what more can I say? Now, as I said before, this was the longest protocol list in the history of my career. And there are so many people that came from very, very far away across oceans to honor you, or they sent representatives if they couldn't. So I'm going to read a few out here, representatives of their respective presidents. We have Dr. Musalia Mudavadi, who's the Kenyan Prime Cabinet Secretary representing President William Ruto. We have representing President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, His Excellency Mago Yusuf Murangwa, who's the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning in Rwanda. We have the Deputy Minister Paul Tasong, Deputy Minister of Economy and Economic Planning, representing his President, the President of Cameroon. Mrs. Milagrosa Obono, is representing the President of Equatorial Guinea. She's the Minister of State Assets and Public Investment. And representing his President from Chad is Tahir Hamid Ngulin, Senior Minister of Finance. We have also with us, I see my brother, His Excellency Abubakar Bukola Saraki, the former Senate President and 2 times Governor of Kwara State, is right there. And now I just want to, that sort of rounds it up, but I wanted to sort of save the best for last, because I have also been very much kind of peripheral to watching your journey, but also the journey of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And I can tell you, around about 2015, not everybody believed it. What's that saying they have? Success has many fathers and Philo is an orphan. Well, back in the day, when it was still called CFTA, didn't even have an A on it, there was one particular leader that if you look north, you will see his country, Your Excellency President Tinubu, right above Nigeria. This man saw this thing. He grabbed his fellow presidents. He said, listen, this is the future. And he rallied probably more tirelessly, more than any other head of state. I would say that, yes, more than any other head of state. So I want to give and recognize, I want to ask him to stand, and I want you to recognize the champion of the AFCFTA, former president of Niger, Mamadou Issoufou. President Oramah, you talked about the successes that Afreximbank has had, so numerous to mention, the ground-shaking, earth-shattering impact of Afreximbank, not just during your tenure, but the fact that Afreximbank singles itself out by not just starting again when there's another president. It builds on the success of past presidents. I see your former 2 past presidents right here in front of me. So many things, so many initiatives. Every day you come out with something. Today is no different. I'm just going to show you 3 things. First is the concessional finance window. It's a video. The second is the Africa Life Science Foundation. And Your Excellency President Tinubu, there was a poet on the stage in the first day, not the one you saw, but on the first day. And he said something which caught my ear. He said, why should the Nigerian naira have to go and ask permission from the US dollar in order to speak to his brother, the Kenyan shilling? I was like, the strong words. I felt it. I was feeling it. Yeah, I was like, yes, why? And that's what PAPS does. PAPS. And we're going to also we launched the PAPS card. I want to show you a video of those 3 special initiatives of Afreximbank. Your Excellency, roll the video, please.
When payments from Africa are processed through international card schemes, they travel halfway around the world, adding cost, exposing sensitive data, and undermining Africa's sovereignty over its own payments. But Africa has a solution to safeguard its financial sovereignty and stability. Introducing PAPS Card, the Pan-African Card Scheme, your passport to payments. Developed and operated by PAPS, supported by Afreximbank, the African Union, and the AFCFTA, in collaboration with Mercury Payment Services. PAPS Card keeps payments within Africa's borders, reduces foreign exchange outflows, strengthens local banks and nations, and lowers the cost of trade. PAPS Card delivers a secure, best-in-class network for governments, banks, and businesses, supporting payment, sovereignty, interoperability, and greater financial inclusion, and is globally accepted via strategic partnerships, including the Discover Network. Empowering Africa with Africa-made payment solutions. Welcome to PAPS Card, your passport to payments.
Écoutez, moi j'ai envie de vous dire que moi aussi j'ai envie d'utiliser très très rapidement ma PAPS Card. Ladies and gentlemen, behind every ambition, every plan for transformation lies a landscape of numbers, trends, and difficult questions. And when the person helping us navigate that terrain is Dr. Yemi Kale, we know we're not just in for data, we're in for clarity, insight, and deep, deep economic vision. En tant qu'économiste en chef du groupe Afreximbank, il éclaire les décisions les plus cruciales de l'institution, tout en portant une vision forte de la souveraineté économique africaine. Merci d'accueillir, mesdames et messieurs, chaleureusement Dr. Yemi Kale. Please welcome Dr. Yemi Kale, ladies and gentlemen.
Your Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellencies, Presidents, Prime Ministers, and heads of states and governments, both past and present, captains of industry, distinguished delegates, esteemed ladies and gentlemen, permit me to respectfully stand on already existing protocols. As we bring this momentous 32nd Afreximbank annual meetings to a close, it is both an honor and profound privilege for me to deliver these special remarks on behalf of the board, management, and staff of the Africa Export-Import Bank. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, over the past few days in plenaries and panels and inside conversations and signature launches, we have reflected deeply on the resilience that have defined Afreximbank's three-decade journey, from a bold idea on paper to an indispensable African institution driving integration, industrialization, and innovation across the continent. This year's theme, Building the Future on Decades of Resilience, has not only anchored our discussions, but has also reaffirmed our collective ambition to define the future of global Africa on our own terms. We have tackled some of the most pressing issues of our time, from restructuring Africa's financial architecture to reimagining trade and technology as levers of sovereignty, to building greater synergy with our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. The insights shared, the strategies explored, and the partnerships renewed are testaments to the immense potential we carry when we act in unity and with purpose. First and most importantly, we express our deepest appreciation to His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and to the government and people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for graciously hosting us here in Abuja and for demonstrating unwavering support throughout this process. Special thanks must go to the Coordinating Minister for the Economy and the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edu. Honorable Minister, your leadership and personal dedication were instrumental to the smooth execution of these meetings. We are grateful for your hands-on engagement and tireless efforts to ensure the success of this gathering. To our very diverse and distinguished speakers, panelists, discussants, moderators, our co-MCs from across Nigeria, Africa, the Caribbean, and the rest of the world, who enriched every session with depth and thought leadership, we express our profound appreciation. We also extend heartfelt thanks to our guests based in Nigeria and across the world who joined us in person and the many watching online for spending the last few days with us. We also express our appreciation to our sponsors, our partners, our collaborators, whose financial and technical support helped us bring this vision to life. To my colleagues within Afreximbank, thank you, starting with the program committee who worked with me and whose insight, diligence, and creativity helped us craft a seminar and plenary program that was not only intellectually rigorous, but also timely, relevant, and inspiring. Mr. Richmond Denze, Dr. Anthony Coleman, Dr. Raymond Bomboya, and Ms. Doreen Nambafu, to the co-chairs of the expanded AGM committee who led our discussions with local organizing committee, Mrs. Anne Eze, Director of Communications and Events, and her team, Mr. Gerald Chihota, Director Board Secretariat, and his team. I also want to thank Mrs. Nicole Bresson, Director Protocol, and her team, Mr. Alain Thierry Mbongo, Regional Chief Operating Officer for Anglophone West Africa based in Abuja, and his team, who all collectively provided exceptional leadership on logistics, protocol, IT, communications, and hospitality. I acknowledge and appreciate your attention to detail, your professionalism and warmth, which ensured that our guests and participants were not just comfortable, but truly impressed. You created an environment where minds could meet, ideas could flourish, and new collaborations could be born. Thank you for delivering a first-class experience. Thank you for showcasing Afreximbank's class, and efficiency, and thank you for demonstrating to the world what it means to be an Afreximbanker. Now allow me to quickly pay tribute to a truly exceptional leader, our outgoing boss, the President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of Afreximbank, Professor Benedict Oramah. Professor Oramah's tenure has been transformational. Under his leadership, Afreximbank has moved beyond being a trade finance institution into becoming a true catalyst for Africa's economic evolution through groundbreaking initiatives such as PAPS, Mansa, Afrexinshore, the African Trade Gateway, our bold forays in healthcare, digital platforms, and industrial policy, and so many others I'm unable to mention here. Mr. President, throughout these meetings, many have spoken eloquently about leadership, its meaning, its demands, and how you embodied it in full measure. But for me, leadership ultimately comes down to three core qualities: character, competence, and capacity. And in you, President Oramah, we find all three, not just present, but exemplified to the highest standard. One powerful example before I close that speaks volumes about President Oramah's character is what we witnessed in these final months of his presidency. Most people nearing the end of such an illustrious tenure tend to ease off, slowing down, taking stock, coasting towards the finish line. But not President Oramah. He did the opposite. He shifted into a higher gear, he worked harder, he launched more initiatives, he traveled more, he pushed boundaries with even greater urgency, and he drove us in the bank even more aggressively. So much so that many of us at the bank began to wonder if perhaps he wasn't actually living after all. But that is quintessential Oramah. It was as if he understood with crystal clarity that time was short. And so he poured out every ounce of energy, every ounce of intellect and passion, not for applause, not for personal reward, but to ensure that after 30 years of remarkable service to Africa, he would never sit on a beach somewhere with his wife and children and wonder if there was something he left undone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just leadership. That is sacrifice. That is purpose. That is legacy. Because for Professor Oramah, this has never been just a job. It has been a calling, a mission to transform Africa and to leave it better, stronger, and more united. On behalf of the entire Afreximbank family, on behalf of Nigeria, on behalf of Africa, on behalf of the Caribbean region, we say thank you once again for your service, thank you for your vision, and thank you for your unshakable commitment to global Africa. Before I leave, I think it's only fitting that we bid farewell to Professor Oramah one more time at his final annual general meeting as President and Chairman of the Board of Afreximbank, not with words alone, but with another resounding standing ovation and a thunderous applause in honor of a truly extraordinary legacy. President, you have led not only with vision, but with unwavering purpose, steadfast integrity, and an unshakable love for Africa. Your legacy will endure in the institutions you have built, the lives you have touched, and the future you have helped shape. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for listening.
Now, please be seated. We've come to that final moment, the crescendo, the cherry on the cake. It's left to me, to my singular honor, to welcome to this stage a leader whose commitment to Africa's economic renaissance is both unwavering and inspiring. He has not only championed Nigeria's transformation, but he stood as a pillar of support for Afreximbank's mission to accelerate intra-Africa trade and prosperity for all Africans. Now, under his leadership, Nigeria has become the largest recipient of Afreximbank's trade and development finance, attracting over $52 billion. That's catalyzed infrastructure, manufacturing, and export competitiveness, empowering businesses and creating jobs across our great nation and far beyond. His dynamic administration has been a driving force behind the African Continental Free Trade Area, pioneering implementation of digital trade protocols and hosting many high-level roundtables that have positioned Nigeria at the forefront of Africa's digital economy and future. His bold reforms to improve the ease of doing business, expand critical infrastructure, and champion public-private partnership have sent a very clear message. Nigeria is open for business and Africa is ready to lead. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming a true champion of African trade, a steadfast supporter of Afreximbank, and a visionary leader, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Please, have your seat. Baba Ekpaleo. Your Excellencies, my dear colleagues from far and wide, with their wives, the first ladies who are here with us. Let me pay a special homage to former head of state, particularly our own Papa, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. We thank God for you. All former vice presidents, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please spare me the burden of protocol. Today is your day, Prof. Oramah. Listening to the account and the report rendered eloquently by you, with the conclusion of lessons for us, your friends, partners. It is a great honor to stand here and say, well done. Welcoming all of you to Abuja for the 32nd annual meetings of the African Export-Import Bank. Nigeria is a fitting host for this pivotal gathering as Africa's most populous nation and one of the strongest voices for unity and progress. More than a routine meeting, this is a moment to reflect on our shared resilience and renew our commitment to shaping Africa's future boldly and deliberately. The theme of this year's meeting, Building the Future on Decades of Resilience, is timely and profound. Afreximbank, under Professor Benedict Oramah's steadfast leadership, has grown its assets from $5 billion to over $37 billion in a good time. Its decade of leadership saw the bank champions Africa's pandemic response, drive industrialization, support the African Free Trade Area, and the continent's creative economy. Its legacy is one of the generational impact. Thank you. "32 years ago, Afreximbank was born from Africa's resolve to own its own development, drive it with over $250 billion mobilized for the trade and development. $150 billion in the last decade alone, the bank has become a pillar of Africa and Africa's progress. Nigeria has proudly benefited from over $52 billion in support directed into energy, agriculture, infrastructure, manufacturing, healthcare, and creative industries. Flagship projects such as Dangote and Bua refineries, the African Medical Center of Excellence, and the African Quality Assurance Center embody confidence in Nigeria, in Nigeria's future and Africa's potential. This partnership extends beyond capital. Nigeria's former approval of the Pan-African Payment Settlement System, PASS, is a significant step towards financial independence. Thank you, Oramah. PASS enables a cross-border trade in local currencies, reducing reliance on foreign exchange and promoting economic stability. I urge all African nations to embrace PASS because deeper financial integration strengthens our collective resilience. Since May 2023, my administration has, under a renewed hope agenda, advanced tall but necessary reforms rooted in macroeconomic stability, inclusive growth, and restored productivity. We have removed the long-standing fuel subsidy scam and unified our exchange rate system. These reforms, though difficult, but essential to correcting systematic distortions. The result of our efforts are clear and promising, providing a strong foundation for our future endeavors. We have made significant strides in various sectors, and these achievements should fill us with great joy for what it lies ahead. In year 2024, Nigeria recorded a 3% GDP growth with broad sectorial contributions. Oil production rebounded to greater than 1.5 million barrels per day, with a 2.5 million target in view. Supported by strategic investment and all it is like $1.2 billion CSC's agreement, inflation is easing, Naira is stabilizing, investors' confidence is recovering. I can also say that debt servicing has declined from 96% to below 65% of revenue. Tax reform is also underway, is already, underway. You have 6 months, it has been signed to law, you have 6 months of grace to get familiar with it. Numbers alone do not capture our progress. Fundamental transformation lies in empowered citizens and thriving enterprises. I say over 100,000 Nigerians have access to a new national consumer credit. with 400,000 more quid given for the next phase. Our landmark student loan program ensures no child is denied higher education due to financial hardship. We have spent 45.9 naira in healthcare to upgrade 8,800 primary healthcare centers, improving maternal care and diagnostic areas in neglected communities. We are deploying thousands of fiber optic cables for digital inclusion to bridge connectivity gap and power innovation. Over 279 roads have been completed on infrastructure, with 65% under construction and 260 roads done. Nigeria's collaboration with Afreximbank is expanding in both scope and ambition. Together, we are launching the African Energy Bank, headquartered in Abuja, with 5 billion in initial capital to finance Africa's energy transition, leveraging gas, renewables, and clean technologies. We are scaling our fertilizer sector to 7.5 million tons annually, supported by Afreximbank. We are positioning Nigeria as Africa's fertilizer hub and ensuring food security for the continent. Meanwhile, transformative projects such as the $3.5 billion Bakassi Deep Sea Port enhanced trade infrastructure and market access. Though platforms like FEDA, Aqua, Canex, and BPAS, our partnership with Afreximbank is not just about financing. It is about fostering African entrepreneurship, elevating quality standards, and scaling small-scale enterprises in creative and export-driven industries. Afreximbank is a strategic partner in our co-creating institutions, infrastructure, and innovation that will define Africa's economic future. As the world becomes increasingly fragmented, with rising protectionism and shifting trade dynamics, Africa must double down on its institutions and capabilities. Afreximbank, by committed member states, must remain agile, bold, and grounded in African realities. In closing, let us fully adopt PASS to reduce costs, conserve foreign reserves, and empower small-scale enterprises. Let us strengthen financial support to Afreximbank to scale its transformational impact. Let us treat inter-African trade not as a goal, but as a strategic pathway growth jobs, and industrial value claim. Let us empower youth, women, and entrepreneurs as beneficiaries and architects of a new African century. The world will not wait for Africa. A united and purposeful Africa can define its destiny. In the face of rising protectionism and shifting trade dynamics, it is more important than ever that we stand together united in our commitment to Africa's development and prosperity. On behalf of the government and people of Nigeria, I welcome you again to Abuja. Let us remember these bold steps catalyze investments and firm commitments they produce. Let history record African leaders and choose to shape their own destiny. Thank you for your presence. I have the honor and privilege to recognize you. The outstanding contribution of Professor Benedict Oramah by conferring you with one of Nigeria's highest honors, the Grand Commander of the Order of Niger. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, history was made. A round of applause for His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He saved the best for last right there. Now, Mr. President, if I could ask you to remain in your space, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, if I could ask you, Mr. President, President Tinubu, if I could ask you, please, we would like to take a photo with you right here, if you wouldn't mind coming back here. President Oramah, if you could guide His Excellency and the First Lady, as well as your First Lady, President. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite heads of state, of government, to please join His Excellency and their spouses. So heads of state, the President of Malawi, please come along with your lovely wife. And former heads of state, please join this photo as well. Vice presidents as well and spouses. Representatives of heads of state and government, too numerous to mention, please join this. Former heads of state and government. Former vice presidents, please join. Former presidents of the bank, Afreximbank, where are you? Please join us for this photo. Senior vice president and executive vice president of Afreximbank, senior vice presidents and executive. Please do not crowd. Members of the press, step back. Members of the press, step back. The AU Deputy Chairperson, please join us, the AU Deputy Chairperson. And CEO of Audu Nepad, there you are, I see you there, Nardos Bekele Thomas. The SG of CARICOM, the Chairman of AMFI, and also some of our titans. Aliko Dangote, please join us. Tony Elumelu, please join us. Wale Tinubu, please join us. And the Lagos State Governor, please join us if you are here. I don't know where, I can't spot eyes on you, but Jide Sanwo-Olu, the Governor of Lagos State, please join us. So now what we're going to do is take a first photograph. So please, if I did not call you, do not join this photograph. Do not join this photograph. Heads of states, former heads of states, captains of industry, chairman of AMFI, Now I will invite board members to come and join us, please. Board members of Afreximbank, wherever you are, please join the photo. And I think the Chief of Staff to the President, I think he may be here. He's there, okay. And ministers and deputy ministers, if you are in the house, you can also join us as well. Pan-African trade champions all gathered together here. What a momentous occasion. Okay, all that remains for us to do, please let me have your attention, please. If we could all stand still for the anthem of the federal, please lower that music. Lower that music. Of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Eshegidigan, Mr. President. Now all that remains is for us to remain in our seats. Members of the press, you are crowding. Allow the President and his dignitaries to leave. Do not leave your seat, please. Allow the President and other dignitaries, heads of states and representatives to exit the building.
Africa. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Your Excellencies, and may I start, Chairperson of the African Union, President of Angola, Your Excellency, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and our host, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Your Excellency, outgoing Chairperson of the African Union and President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government of the African Union, and First Ladies present, Your Excellency, the President of the Palestinian Authority, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, former heads of state and heads of government of the African Union, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and guests all. I stand here clothed in the spirit of the battles of Adwa, conscious that it was that battle within 24 hours that shook the confidence of the powers of Europe, but inspired the people of Africa and the children of the African diaspora that good would prevail over evil and light over darkness, but only in the context of our unity. I stand here conscious that it was that battle that forged the beginnings of Pan-Africanism that eventually led to the movement for independence and the destruction of the colonial powers to give us not full development and power, but the first steps of political independence. I stand here conscious and buffeted by the dreams and works of the great Pan-African pioneers, and conscious that as a children of the Caribbean, we have long dreamt for the moment of unity with our brothers and sisters of Africa, a division that was secured by those whose success and survival depended on separation of us rather than on the ability for us to act as one common people. Our relationship, you can say, was embryonic, but regrettably, as long as it has been and as related as we have been, it has been sporadic. And it is up to us as the children of independent states to determine whether the history of separation shall be our future or whether the spirit of Adwa can be our inspiration to confront the challenges of a new world. Yes, I stand here as a daughter of Africa. I stand here equally as a proud Prime Minister of Barbados, a country which is the first landmass that you reach after you leave this great continent of Africa, a country which became a hub for the wrong reasons, but today I come to Ethiopia to share with you in the African Union that we can be a hub now for the right reasons between our two peoples. I stand here as the proud chairman of CARICOM, the Caribbean community, recognizing that as a member of the 6th region of Africa, we have come to reclaim our Atlantic destiny. We have come to ensure that the very futures of our people are different and will not once again be determined by a middleman who will ensure that the Middle Passage is one that sees our people at the bottom of the ocean's floor of the Atlantic or in the fields of the plantations of the Caribbean, but instead that it will be a future that sees our people hears our people, feels our people, and that will determine in future that it is we who shall forge the manner in which we cooperate, integrate, and invest, rather than simply being victims of a past history. I stand here equally as the chair of the V20, 70 countries across the world that are climate vulnerable, 40% of whom come from this great continent of Africa, recognizing that it is only through unity that we can confront the existential crisis of our generation, that of the climate crisis, has already laid out, ably so, many of the iniquities that we continue to face in spite of political independence. It was His Majesty Haile Selassie who popularized and told us that there shall be no first-class or second-class citizens, words popularized by Bob Marley, learned by all of our people without appropriately recognizing the context in which he spoke and the mission which must be ours for generations until it is achieved. He told us that there would be war if there were first-class and second-class citizens. He told us that there would be war if the color of our skin was more significant than the color of our eyes. And we see here in the continent the continued descent into conflicts born out of ethnicity differences, born out of a mad grab for resources, not invariably for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others who seek to use our people as pawns in the determination of their own future. But we stand here as proud people, and we have enough among ourselves to know the difference between right and wrong, and to forge a future that is not for a few, but for the many. Indeed, as the world confronts the climate crisis, it is the poorest of the poor who remain the most vulnerable to floods and droughts and hurricanes. It is the poorest of the poor, and soon to be the middle of the middle, who will no longer be able to access insurance and therefore to be able to forge ahead with development if we do not make changes. We have examples of a partnership that have worked for us, not just from the spirit of Adwa and the conquest and the rise of the Pan-Africanist movement in our history, but within recent times. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the African Union, under the leadership then of President Ramaphosa, and with the assistance of Dr. Tedros of the WHO, that recognized that the Caribbean, which was being marginalized by denial of access to basic therapeutics, basic medical equipment, to vaccines, that we should not be left as pariahs on the global landscape, but that our brothers and sisters in Africa would bring us through the Africa Medical Supplies platform to be able to ensure that we could secure for our own people It was with the solidarity of many of you in the African Union that the Bridgetown Initiative has been able to take root and to make a case for a more modern and a fairer system that allows us to be able to access finance and to be able to put in place measures that allow us to be able to pause our repayment of debt during the period of necessity for rebuilding after horrific climatic events. We have seen how partnership helps us. We do not need any more evidence. What is required of us is to lead the way to peace